Hey everybody, my name is Yyanthire. So the 3D Overhaul is now live on Steam. If you haven't checked it out already, I'd highly recommend going and checking it out. It's completely free to play, but you will need a slightly higher end PC in order to run it, since this is all a bunch of fancy 3D graphics. So with the 3D Overhaul out, I figured now would be a great time to talk about the future of the game. So right now, there's only a single map and only a handful of units in order to play around with. You really only have the Disciple, and the Apprentice isn't really as fleshed out as I'd like it to be. So going forward, the next main goal of the game is actually to get some new maps into the game. So the first things I want to do is I want to make a home base map. So back in the Classic, there was a home base that you started out as, and this is where you basically build up all of your structures and do any sort of advancements, unlocking spells, etc. So I want to reincorporate that back into the game. This will be the second map, so after you defeat Baron, you'll go straight to the home base map, and your character will set up a little home base, and you'll be able to do a lot of more normal stuff, such as interact with the home, build new structures, etc. Beyond that, I want to incorporate the second map. So the second major map is going to play a lot like the current map in this demo, and just feature much more content, really flesh out the Apprentice a lot more, and really start to kind of get the game rolling a little bit as you go ahead and proceed throughout the Grove and continue exploring, etc. The next major element is, of course, story integration. So I really want to have a strong emphasis on story in this game. Really want an emphasis on possibly some NPCs and side quests and stuff like that. Just more stuff to do in the game. More lore, just to kind of really enrich the experience, make it a lot more immersive in a sense. With that, I imagine new models will come, new music will come as well, so a lot of stuff in the works. But for the time being right now, first major goal is getting map transitions working again, and then making it so that you can actually transfer to the home base, and then transfer to the next map, and then of course from there, starting to really incorporate the story. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of progress. So the first main element of progress I just made is actually right here in the spellbook, so I figured it would be a really important idea to go ahead and add exclamation marks on anything new spells that you've unlocked, for example. So we're already kind of doing that with new enemies that you've just slain. However, I think it's much more important to have it on spells that you've just unlocked, because unlocking spells is going to be a huge part of the game. So as you can see here, we can look down here, you can see the Disciple's brand new as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and that'll essentially mark it as seen. And then if I were to go to the General tab, as you can see here, I did some adjustments on these sprites, and we can see Lesser Fireball, for example. It's locked currently, and then of course we can see the Mystic Bolt. So the Mystic Bolt has this little exclamation mark over it, and that essentially just means that it's a new spell that you've just unlocked. So I can go ahead and drag it on the spell bar, and it's just kind of there. Continuing forward from there, there's of course the unlocking of new spells. So if I were to just kind of go through and unlock all spells, let me see if I need to just retoggle Spellbook. As you can see here, when I switched out of it after I've unlocked it, now they're marked as brand new. So that's pretty important feature. I believe it should also be working through the Alt tab as well, as you can see here. So whichever you prefer out of the Spellbook, if you like the main tab, it's more organized, if you like the Alt tab, etc, etc. So that should really help out new players when they unlock new spells, and just be able to see what exactly they've just unlocked. Like, oh, we unlocked Lesser Heal, we unlocked Lesser Fireball. Make it a little bit more sane for the player, because this Spellbook is definitely a little bit confusing to new players, but definitely something that I want the players to be able to learn and use, because it is a very useful tool, especially since I've gotten very heavily used to it over the years. It keeps everything fairly well organized, so that should be it for major spellbook adjustments. There's some other cleanup areas I want to do on the game to make it so that control and playability is just a little bit better. So let's go ahead and hop into those. So one of the features I've been considering is a way to toggle between all cast and selected unit casting. So one of the interesting quirks about Fragment's Moonrise is the fact that it doesn't matter how many units or what kind of units you have selected, if you only have two or you have all of them, regardless of whom you have selected. When you try and cast a spell, it'll try and cast it with all of the units. So I think this is a pretty good feature just for general spellcasting usage and general fighting. However, there are instances where you will want to only use units that you have selected in order to cast, and so I think in those scenarios, I think it would be an interesting idea to start to set up a toggle. So a quick little, maybe like a tab button, like a little button down here, it'll just switch between all cast and only selected unit casting, just to make it so that the player has as much control over that as possible. Couldn't think of any other more interesting or more intuitive ideas, so I think a simple quick toggle would really do it. But let me go ahead and show you what's going on first. So I have these two units selected, and I go ahead and cast, and everybody tries to cast cast. So with this toggle on, what will happen is only these selected units will cast. And you can of course freely toggle that between the two as much as you wish, just to make it as smooth as possible. So let me go ahead and I'll start to set up the button, and I'll start to set up the controls. And I think I really want to do is, the first time you click this button, it's going to pop up a little tutorial just so you kind of get an idea of what it's doing, just so you're not left blind. But for the most part, at its core, you're just going to be casting with all units on the field regardless of whom you have selected. So let's go ahead and hop into doing some programming. Alright, so it was a feature that was fairly easy to code up, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. So as you can see here, we got the button right here on the screen. I just wanted to make it as obvious as possible, just like the Spellbook button. So you can go ahead and you can click it, or you can press the hotkey. When you go ahead and do so, let's go ahead and change it so now it says sell instead of for all. As you can see, we got a little blurb about what it's actually doing here, just so that the first time you click it, you're like, oh, what's this? So then you go ahead and just press OK, and as you can see, it's SEL for select, or all for everybody. So if I only have a single unit selected and I go ahead and cast, as you can see, everybody starts casting. But if I go ahead and click this button and switch over, now I am on the select option. So when I go ahead and cast the spell, just this unit casts. So as you can see, fairly useful, extremely quick to switch between. So totally up to your preference how you like to use it or what you want to use, or you can really toggle between the two. But I think for the most part, leaving it on all is your best bet. But as you get a little bit more advanced and get more spells beyond the standard 3, this Mystic Bolt, Lesser Fireball, and Lesser Heal, you may want to be toggling a little bit more. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and move on to another feature. So, of course, a really huge feature is the open world element. We can't really have an open world without more than one map. So, let's go ahead and take a look at what I've just done. So I reconfigured how we're actually going to be doing the mapping system, since we're going to have a series of static maps, and then eventually I'll like to make some random maps as well, just to kind of spruce up the interest of the game. But for right now, I just wanted to show off the new map transition feature. So let's go ahead, and as soon as it loads up, there we go, so we can skip the tutorial and just hop on over here. So I set up the next passageway right at the end of Barren. Ignore the fact that the grass is all gone. This is just a something I'll fix. It's just a little minor bug. But as you can see right over here, when I come over here, walk right over here, as you can see right over here is where the Barren boss fight is. I of course haven't actually defeated him, but if we come back all the way up here, we can go ahead and we can click on this. So this is going to be our new passageway. Just go ahead and click it. Ask if you want to traverse. Go ahead and press OK. It goes ahead and loads the next map. So I was surprised how quickly I was able to get this done. It seemed like a very complicated feature. However, it turned out to be actually pretty quick and easy, especially since I was using a lot of the mechanisms from the original 2D version of the game. But as you can see here we are on a new map. Technically a new map. As you can see, looks kind of just like the intro. I just copied it over the home base map, or the intro part from the original map, but we got a cool little map that we can now explore and run around in and do all that kind of stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm surprised how quickly I was able to get this done. It only took me about a day or so. So that's good. And from here, I'm going to actually go ahead and totally redo this map, because I want to do a true home base map just like we have in the 2D version of the game, but that'll come at a later point. For now, go ahead and we can actually traverse all the way back, and we can see that we have back and forth access. It's worth mentioning that camera rotation retains itself. So alright, so here we are. We're actually in the second map. So I went ahead and started to set up the second map as actually the home base. So after you defeat Apprentice Dragon Baron, you actually move forward and then go into what you would consider the classical home base for the game. So this would be essentially the first starting map in the Fragment's Moonrise classic version of the game, but in this one is going to be the second map. I wanted to give the player a bit more of an introduction to the world, and then go ahead and set them free and go ahead and let them explore around. And then after that, we're actually going to return to how we were previously through the home base mechanism. So as you can see here, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on it. It's just a big open pathway right now, and this is of course going to curve around here coming up. So I think I definitely want to make this a lot shorter, and then a lot more narrow and a lot more refined. And then of course I'm just going to fill it full of particle effects and vegetation and what sort. But right now it just curves around, and then we go ahead and make our way up through here. And coming up in this endless void is of course going to be the home. So this all needs to be a lot more tight knit. It's pretty big right now. I just sort of blocked it out and just gave it a big size. But right here, this is where the home is going to be. This home is actually going to get an overhaul for the home base. So instead of for just the simple Spawn Disciple and Advancement spell, you're actually going to get the entire list of home spells. So the home's going to get quite a lot more of additional spells. It's going to be a lot more how it was in the classic version of the game. I wanted to start players off with just these 2 simple little buttons to be able to click, just to make it as simple as possible for new players just starting out the game and getting used to all the controls and stuff. But going forward, the home's actually going to be a staple part of the game, just like it was in the classic version. So as you can see, if I go ahead and zoom out the map, it's pretty huge right now. I definitely think I want to just sort of shrink this up a little bit, have this just go right about, probably about here, and then bend in, and then have a more open sort of area, but not a huge area. Right now it's absolutely massive. If I were to try and actually explore all of this, it would just be way too much. So nice little blocking, and I need to redo all of my particle effects and add my grass and stuff, but that'll all come next. And then of course, coming all the way up through here, this is the next major part, is so coming up through here is, of course, the ending section of the map. You can see we sort of snaked our way all the way back here. But what this ending part of the map is going to be is it's actually going to be the next map forward. So as soon as you're done with your home base and done messing around with it, you actually be able to progress the next map forward. And going forward from here is going to be much more closer to the classic experience. So in classic, you had your home base and you would build and upgrade your units and all that kind of stuff, and create new mystics and all that kind of stuff. And then you would venture out to each of the maps, and if you lost a unit and died or anything like that, or fully lost your entire army, you'd have to come back to the home base and rebuild it. So that's a feature that I'm going to keep in the game. In the first map, I wanted it to be very simple, so we just keep respawning mystics every time we die. However, going forward, especially given the fact that at this point in time you are most likely going to be an apprentice unit, you're going to have a lot more survivability, and you're going to be able to sustain yourself a lot more out in the world and try not to die as much. So that's my current design philosophy. I want to refine the home base map quite a bit more, and then start to go forward by making it so that the world requires you to have much more knowledge and understanding of survivability and not getting your units killed. In the first map it didn't matter. I thought that was a good design decision. But going forward, I want it to be much more punishing, so that if you do get your units killed, you now either have to go back to home base or you have to continue forward. And I think it's a lot more fun that way, because now you're actually really wanting to strategize with your units, keep them alive as much as possible. But if they do die, now you get to make a decision on whether or not you'd like to return home, if you've sustained heavy enough losses, or if you think you can kind of push on. I really want the player to be able to make those decisions. It's a lot more fun gameplay wise. So let me go ahead, I'm going to further refine this map and see what it starts to look like. So I did a little bit more modification. Here's what it's looking like from a top-down view. So as you can see here, here's the entrance passageway down here in the bottom right. Go ahead and make your way up through here, and you find that you see the home now, and of course exit out through this way, and this is of course going to be the way going forward. Kind of tried to make it as organic feeling as I could, so I didn't really want it to be a like almost like a static kind of map, but I think this is a interesting top-down design. I don't know how I feel about how long this corridor is, but I might make it a little bit shorter, and then over here I could probably do a little more adjustments, make it feel a little more organic, because it feels a little bit too 90 degrees right now. But let's go ahead and hop in game and actually take a look at it. So here we are in game. As you can see here, it just kind of cuts off at the back end here, and then you really only have a way to get funneled forward. So go ahead and make our way forward. A lot more tight quarters, but I don't like the fact that it's so, the walls are just so high. I don't really like the fact that it's sort of like extremely hilly. I don't want to almost like make it more foresty kind of feeling. The first map was definitely very hilly feeling, but I feel as though I could probably do something to sort of reduce the hills and stuff, and only really keep it as a back-end feature, or as a back-end aspect to it, so it's mostly just a lot of force that you're running through. As you can see here, here's the home, and then we can make our way a little bit more forward. And come up through here. This definitely feels a little bit more open. I feel like I can close that off like a little bit more. Bearing in mind, you're not going to have just a single unit. You're going to have multiple units running through here at a given time. So more openness is going to be better, so it can more easily get the way through. But nice short pathway up here, and this is going to be the passageway going forward to the next map. Of course, it's the home and our starting passageway way back here. So definitely feel like this needs a little bit more refinement. However, it's doing pretty good so far, so I'll see what I can do. I really want it to be a very foresty grove kind of feel. So like you're in this kind of like almost like a little hidden meadow to it in a sense. So let's go ahead and play around with this some more and see what we get. Alright, so here we are. This is the new home base map, so I went ahead and pretty much finished it off. So we can go ahead and continue forward from here. So that's the passageway you'll spawn in at, and you'll kind of start to make your way up through here with your 3 units. 3 apprentices most likely. Swoop around here. I wanted to really feel like a tucked away, really dense part of the forest. As you can see, we got a little clearing, and we have our home. So with that, we can actually go ahead and go a little bit more forward. And then leading back here is, of course, going to be the way forward. I haven't set up the passageway for it yet, but I'll work on that after I'm done with everything I need to get done in the home. So you can see it just kind of clears off back here. Nice little part of the meadow. And then coming back here, there's actually going to be a secret. So coming back here, kind of marked with these, there's going to be a part of the map back here, just a tiny little part. It's basically a secret, and when you unlock teleport, you'll be able to kind of access it. I wanted to probably start to hide stuff here and there, but for the time being, as you can see, there's tons of particle effects. That'll be more fun this way. And then we have plenty of space right here in this nice little clearing, so that when the player eventually does want to be able to build more structures and stuff like that, as was the case in Classic, we'll be able to do that. But for right now, it's just the standard stuff. I just threw all this in just to kind of get an idea, but I really do feel like it kind of has a pretty strong, dense feeling to it. I think it's going to be a pretty good little home base. I might need to cut down on a lot of these particle effects. I feel like they might just be a little bit laggy for weaker machines, but I'll leave it alone for now and just kind of play it by ear. So this should be the new home base map, so let me know what you think about it. And from here, the next major thing I want to do is I actually want to overhaul this home to be more like the home in Classic. So you can go ahead and set it for these buttons. As I was talking about previously, we're going to have a spellbook button here. You click the spellbook button, you get a whole list of home spells you can cast, which is pretty much like all of your upgrades to your units and all the different structures that you can spawn in and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be wanting to work on that next and really get this more of like a true home. But for the time being, that's going to be it for this blog. In the next one, I'll actually be working on those home features. I want to try and keep these blogs a little bit shorter, so I feel like they're a little bit more enjoyable to watch that way. Alright, until next time, you guys take care.